Do you know that America once had a president who kept a bear cub, a badger, a hyena, and even snakes inside the White House, all while reading 3 books a day, boxing in the Oval Office, and delivering a speech with a bullet still lodged in his chest? If you love powerful American history and stories of real heroes, make sure to subscribe right now, because this channel brings you the untold truths the world has forgotten. It sounds impossible, almost mythical, like something out of an adventure novel. But for Theodore Roosevelt, this wasn't a story. This was simply his life. And what if I told you that this same man, the warrior president, the Rough Rider, the unstoppable force of American history, began as a weak, fragile boy who could barely breathe, a boy doctors believed would never reach adulthood, a child who gasped for air every night, fighting battles inside his own lungs before he ever fought on a battlefield. Let's begin. Before the cowboy hat, before the Rough Riders, before the presidency, there was a small, frail boy in Manhattan gasping for breath. Asthma in the 19th century was not what it is today. There were no inhalers, no specialized treatments, no rescue medications. When an attack hit, families could do little more than sit by the bedside and watch as the child struggled for air. Young Theodore Roosevelt suffered attack after attack, midnight fits of choking, wheezing, clutching at his chest, begging for oxygen. Doctors told his parents to keep him indoors, to let him live a quiet life, to accept that their son simply didn't have the body for anything strenuous. But Theodore hated weakness more than he feared death. He wanted to climb trees. He wanted to explore forests. He wanted to wrestle, run, and breathe free like every other child his age. One day, after being beaten and humiliated by neighborhood boys who saw him as an easy target, Theodore ran home in tears. His father, the man he admired more than anyone, sat beside him and spoke words that would echo throughout American history. "Theodore, you have the mind, but you have not the body. And without the body, the mind cannot go as far as it should. You must make your body." These words became Roosevelt's creed for life. From that moment on, he trained relentlessly. He lifted weights in a private gym his father built for him. He took boxing lessons. He hiked, swam, ran, and pushed himself to the edge of collapse. Every breath came at a cost, and he paid it willingly. Slowly, painfully, inch by inch, the weak child became a strong young man. The boy who couldn't breathe became the man who demanded the nation take its first deep breath of the 20th century. Roosevelt didn't overcome asthma. He fought it, and turned that fight into the foundation of his character. This first curious aspect of his life, the sickly boy who built himself, reveals something powerful. Theodore Roosevelt wasn't born extraordinary. He made himself extraordinary. Now imagine this. You walk into the White House, expecting quiet halls and polished floors. Instead, you hear the scampering of paws, the chirping of strange birds, and maybe, just maybe, the growl of a small bear. Yes, a bear. Do you know that Theodore Roosevelt ran the White House with more animals than some zoos? Roosevelt didn't just love nature, he was obsessed with it. It was his refuge, his classroom, his sanctuary. He studied animals from childhood, collected specimens, wrote books about them, and even as president, he never stopped surrounding himself with creatures of every kind. So when his children brought home a new animal, Roosevelt didn't say no. He laughed, welcomed it, and added it to what reporters eventually called the Roosevelt White House Zoo. Among the animals living, not visiting but living, in the White House were a black bear cub, a hyena, a badger named Josiah, a pony that actually rode the White House elevator, snakes, parrots, guinea pigs, and even a small lion. If you're still watching, you're clearly someone who loves deep, powerful American history. So take just 1 second to subscribe. It helps us bring more incredible stories of the heroes who shaped this country. The Roosevelt children were notorious for their enthusiasm. One day, a visiting dignitary opened his briefcase, only to find a harmless snake coiled inside, courtesy of the Roosevelt boys. In another story, a foreign ambassador standing stiff and formal suddenly found himself being approached by a badger trotting confidently across the carpet. To Roosevelt, this wasn't chaos. It was life. It was joy. It was the wildness of America, brought into the most powerful building in the country. This curiosity about animals wasn't childish. It was part of Roosevelt's deep belief that nature was the soul of the nation, that America's forests, rivers, wildlife, and untouched wilderness were sacred. This is why he preserved over 230 million acres of land. Because the man who lived with wild animals understood better than anyone. A nation that destroys its wilderness destroys part of itself. The next curious aspect is one of the most unbelievable events in presidential history. October 14th, 1912, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The crowd was enormous. Roosevelt was campaigning as the leader of the Progressive Bull Moose Party. As he stepped into his car, a man pushed through the crowd, raised a revolver, and fired. The bullet tore through Roosevelt's jacket, through his steel eyeglass case, through his 50-page folded speech, and lodged itself deep inside his chest. The crowd screamed. Chaos erupted. The assassin was tackled. Roosevelt reached into his coat, pulled out his blood-soaked hand, and looked calmly at it. Then he did something absolutely astonishing. He said, "I am all right. I will address the meeting." His aides begged him to go to the hospital. He refused. He walked onto the stage, stood before thousands of shocked supporters, and began speaking. "Friends, I shall ask you to be as quiet as possible. I don't know whether you fully understand that I have just been shot, but it takes more than that to kill a bull moose." He then spoke for more than 80 minutes. Blood seeped through his shirt. He grew pale. He grew weak. But his voice never broke. He held up his speech, the pages torn by the bullet. He showed the crowd the hole in his chest. It became one of the most legendary moments of political courage in American history. Doctors later said that moving so much could have killed him. But Roosevelt was Roosevelt, stubborn, relentless, unbreakable. This isn't just a curiosity. It's a testament to the man. He didn't survive the shot because he was strong. He survived because he refused, utterly refused, to fall. Another remarkable aspect of Theodore Roosevelt might be the most surprising of all. He read about 2 to 3 books every single day, even while serving as president. Not skimmed, not glanced at, read. Roosevelt's mind worked at a speed most people could barely understand. He devoured knowledge like fuel. His reading list was outrageous. History, science, geography, poetry, naval strategy, exploration, philosophy, biology, law, literature, anthropology, politics, religion, anything and everything. He would finish a long presidential day, return to the White House, sit down with a book, and finish it before bed. On train rides, he tore through novels. On ships, he read books cover to cover. During vacations, he read piles of them, sometimes 10 in a single weekend. When reporters asked him about it, Roosevelt said simply, "Reading is a disease with me." But this wasn't just a hobby. It was his superpower. It shaped his decisions. It sharpened his leadership. It armed him with the knowledge of centuries. When Roosevelt spoke, he didn't speak like a politician. He spoke like a scholar who understood the world not through opinion, but through deep, relentless study. This curiosity about reading reveals the dual nature of Roosevelt. He wasn't just the warrior on the battlefield. He was the thinker in the library, a man of muscle and mind. The final curiosity in this documentary brings us back to a surprising truth. Roosevelt, the man we imagine as a fearless, charging warrior, was nearly blind. Without his glasses, he could barely see a thing. His eyesight was terrible, so terrible that he had multiple pairs, each carefully crafted. But during the Spanish-American War, when Roosevelt volunteered to fight on the front lines with the Rough Riders, he knew he faced a problem. Glasses can fall off, glasses can break, glasses can get lost in the chaos of war, so he tied them to his head. Picture that. Hundreds of bullets flying overhead, cannons roaring, smoke covering the battlefield, and Roosevelt charging forward with his spectacles strapped to his face, like a man who refused to let weakness stop him. The Rough Riders joked about it. Roosevelt joked about it. It became part of his legend. But beneath the humor lies something powerful. He knew his weaknesses, and he refused to let them define him. He didn't hide his flaws. He outworked them. He outfought them. He outlived them. On San Juan Hill, the nearly blind colonel led one of the most famous charges in American military history. Because courage isn't about perfect strength. It's about imperfect men refusing to back down. So who was Theodore Roosevelt? He was the sick child who became steel, the president who lived in a zoo, the warrior who shrugged off bullets, the scholar who devoured books, the nearly blind soldier who led men into battle. He was a man of contradictions, fragile yet fierce, brilliant yet wild, disciplined yet unpredictable. If Roosevelt's story inspired you today, don't leave without hitting subscribe and turning on notifications.